Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to our workshop, and the title of our workshop is Hustle to Bustle. I am Valerie Alston. I'm a college and career outreach specialist at Casa Grande High School. And with me today, I have Melanie Cooper, who is my colleague across town at Petaluma High. We are your co-moderators for today. And I'm so excited to introduce to you our fabulous guest speaker, Miss Tracy Jackson, as I know her as Tracy Jones Jackson, but Miss Tracy Jackson grew up in Roanoke Park. And any of you that are out there today that attended Rancho Cotati High School, she's actually an alum of Rancho Cotati High School. She started working in human resources while at State Farm Insurance Companies. And I am just elated to tell you that I actually helped mentor her, but she has far surpassed me. And now she is the owner of her own company. But prior to becoming the owner of her own company, Tracy was the vice president, chief human resource officers for numerous companies in the Sacramento area. And now she is the owner of HREZ in Sacramento. So please help me welcome Tracy Jackson. She has a lot of alphabets behind her name. She also is a mother of 3 wonderful daughters and a wife, and really her daughter who just got accepted at Columbia University. So I'd like to give her a shout out for that. So welcome, Tracy Jackson, and take it away on the Hustle to Bustle workshop and tell our students what they need to know for the 21st century.
Thank you so much, Val, Mrs. Alston, to them. But I'm excited to be here with you all. I see that we still have a few people still coming in, but that's okay. You'll be able to catch up. So my name is Tracy Jackson, and we're going to just take you on a little journey to help you get to the job that you want when you're ready to look for employment. So thank you for joining me today. As Miss Alston mentioned, that I am from Roanoke Park. So I graduated from Rancho Cotati. I attended college originally in New York. So I went from Roanoke Park to New York at St. John's University. And then I graduated from San Diego State. And I've been in HR for over 20 years. So then you also may recognize this face because that's my father. So if you are familiar with Lawrence E. Jones Middle School in Roanoke Park, that is named after my father. Some people knew him as Officer Friendly. He's been gone now for a few years, but there's no denying, there's no DNA test needed for that man to know that he's my father. So anyway, I'm proud to be here with you all and proud to be from Sonoma County. I live in Sacramento now, but let's just take you on a little journey because I want to help you get to where you want to be when you're ready to be employed. So first off, I want you to get prepared. You know, many of you, especially when you're younger, by the way, like Valerie mentioned, I have 3 daughters. So my youngest is going to graduate from high school. My middle is graduating from UC Santa Cruz. So she's a banana slug. And then I have an older one who's 24 and she went to UCLA. So first thing you want to do is make a professional email address. Some of the things you got to be careful about are zeros and O's because sometimes they're hard to distinguish when you type them in an email. So be careful about that. The same with I's and L's. And you want to avoid some of those slang names. And yes, I've seen them, the pimp daddy or big pimpin'. Nobody needs to be a zaddy or a thought bay or a dime piece. So don't put that in your email address. I want you guys to have a professional email address. Put your name in there, something close to it. Try to keep your birth year and all that kind of stuff out of there. But yeah. Next, I want you to do is make sure you clean up your social media. I'm actually really thankful that I'm too old to have been in social media when I was your age because unfortunately, those things follow people. And while you're doing it, it sounds brilliant and you think it's funny and edgy and all that, but that you really need to go through and clean those up and make yours private. I know you want to get as many shares and likes and follows and all that, but just clean that up. The next thing is your voicemail should be professional. You know, you'll call sometimes, you'll hear people screaming or, music or something like that. Make sure it's just simple and warm with your name, how to get a hold of you. And yes, if you want a job, you have to check your voicemail. Don't tell a job if you want to talk to me to text me. That doesn't work for a job. So when you're looking for a job, make sure you're actually checking your voicemail and don't have your mailbox full. Many times when we're calling people to talk to them about job interviews, they don't answer and their voicemail is full. Guess what? We've moved on to someone else. So make sure that that's true. And, nothing witty on your voicemail when you're looking for a job. Sure, do that when you're not looking for a job or if you don't think someone's going to call you, but make sure that you clean that all up. You might also want to do a Google search on your own name and see if anything pops up. I've been surprised at some of the things that popped up with me. I forgot about an article I had written. I forgot or didn't realize that my name was in some places. Some people have forwarded some things to me because sometimes I'll get interviewed and it's way later that it gets published and I didn't realize that it got published. Someone told me last week, "Hey, I heard you on a podcast." And I said, "Which podcast?" "I did that a few months ago," and they finally released it and never told me which date it came out. So that's how I found out. But Google yourself and look that kind of thing up. So let me show you an example. So you might see that this is from January 25th of this year. This is one of my Facebook friends, which she posted. "I learned something new today. I won't name the company, but I started doing some consulting work for them, and apparently they do social media searches. I was presented with this paper today and asked to explain my post. First, let me say, I'm always cautious of what I post because we live in an era of screenshots and reporting. They do this for any employee, but now, dang, has anyone else ran into this?" So this just happened this year. So this is what she got presented with. She got presented with a paper that showed her accounts that they actually did some searches on, and she had 2 flagged comments you see down here. Here are the 2 flagged comments that she wrote. So one of them was just earlier this year, just, "Lord, I have some Facebook friends who you gave me who are stupid AF." We know what that means. We won't, yeah, that means as fun, right? Got it. Okay, so, and then she also said she hates when people ask me to spell Cunningham. It sounded out stupid. So these are things she actually had to respond to get a job. And that's in 2021. The technology to farm this type of information is going to get better. In the cancel culture that we live in today, employers want to know who they are attaching themselves with because they don't want to attract the wrong type of people. If someone was in the Capitol raid, they want to know that before you work with them. So if you don't think it's real, I wanted to show you a real example that happened this year, very, very recently. So what do you want to do? You need to know what you want to do before you start looking for a job. And if you're not familiar or sure, there's a few different resources that are available to you. Sonoma County Connects has great job skill training and job search assistance. So if you're not sure, that's a good place to start. They'll also help you with your resume. Sonoma County Portrait of a Graduate, explore that page. It has a lot of good information. Your counselors, they are also a great source of information, so talk to them. And you need to know what you're good at. It could be if you like arts or something creative, mechanical, you like dealing with cars or putting things together like clocks or fixing things, even gaming. You might want to think about doing coding or to actually create the games and not just play them, or if you'd like to write. So these are things you need to know if you like dealing with numbers, if you maybe want to go into accounting. There's lots of things. Once you know what you're good at and what you like, there's professions that are designed for all of those things. Remember, if you like it and it's a product of something you deal with, somebody's got to create those things, and you could be on the creating side and actually, make that something that works for you. And make sure when you start with an employer, you establish a good reputation. And if you ask people for guidance, it's always good to actually listen to what people who have wisdom, who've been before you, what they have to say. So let's talk about, where do you look? Most of the people, they get jobs through word of mouth. So Miss Alston was referring to the time I worked at State Farm. I was in college at San Diego State, and You guys are going to laugh. I actually put a letter in the mail with a stamp on it, and it got to Miss Alston. That is actually how I started my career. And she knew me, and that's when we connected, and that's how we've got to going. That's how I started my HR profession and my career. And I've stayed in HR for years. But one of the best things to do is word of mouth. So you want to let people know you're looking. And that doesn't mean you should go up to them and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Will you hire me?" You can tell them, "I'm looking for a job. Do you know anyone who's hiring?" But make sure you know what you're looking for too, because there's some things I don't want to do. And I know that those are limitations for me. Now, but you got to start somewhere. Just have to know that almost every job has an element that sucks. Like, I love what I do. I just absolutely love it. But probably my least favorite is having to deal with separations and terminations, and I have to deal with those. And the worst ones for me are layoffs. I don't like dealing with layoffs, and I also don't like dealing with compensation issues. Um, and not that I don't like people getting paid. I don't like to actually come up with a whole program on how to do that. But for the most part, I know that every job has a little element of a part of it that sucks, and you have to recognize that some things you have to look at the big picture and not just the part that you don't like. So make sure you share the news that you're looking for a job and kind of know what maybe your limitations are. You can also go to temp agencies, or, talk to your church family or to union halls and things of the sort, and ask them what kind of careers and positions they have. And while you're shopping, you can look for a job if you're dressed appropriately. But when you're in Target and they have a kiosk that you can just log in while you're there, if you're spending a lot of time there already and your money, you might want to think about working there. Many of you love Dutch Bros, or even going into places like your credit union or local banks, or any of your favorite hobby stores. If you're really into, boating, then you might want to think about working in a store that has something to do with boating, or, working with fishing, or whatever your favorite hobby is. Think about those things. Places that maybe you don't think about are like tire stores. They need good people, and they will train people or how to change oil and all those kinds of things. And they're great skill sets to have. You can also look online, but I can tell you that most people know people who they are hiring. Most of the people who are hiring, you don't have to go to a big business to get a job. There are lots of small businesses that are looking to hire people. But if you're going to look online, these are the places you can look. You can look on Indeed, Craigslist, Career Builder, LinkedIn. There's lots of resources that you can look at. Even Facebook has some, and Insta is now doing some kind of job ads. So you can look on all those places, but the best thing to do is to really be connected to someone who's in that organization to get your foot in the door. So you might even want to get a LinkedIn site, even though you may not engage as much, but find people. You can search for people who work in that organization, and maybe some of them are the ones you know. So getting connected to people early is a good idea. Also, any kind of other local businesses you're familiar with, like hospitals, gyms, any nonprofits. And if you don't have time to work full time, you can think about volunteering for your favorite organization. It could be like for the animal rescue. It could be with Meals on Wheels, with dealing with elderly people. It could be canine companions. It could be all different things that you can think about working with. So big brothers, big sisters, they always need some older kids who can help these younger kids, to have someone to look up to. So let's talk about creating your resume. Your resume needs to be ready. You should not be creating it only if you're looking for a job. So get that ready. And then you want to regularly update it, because what you'll find is you might forget that you worked on a big project. That's something really important to add on there. So even if you have even just volunteer work, you can include that on there. So it doesn't have to be a full-time job or a paid job. So it could be volunteer work. You might be doing some childcare at the nursery in your church, or you could be doing something with a club like the Girl Scouts and things of the sort. So you can add those kinds of things. Make sure it's a clean, sharp font, and try to keep it in 10 to 12 point font size. Our eyes get tired. We look at a resume, and I can tell you, as we're looking at people's resume, you probably have about 10 seconds for us to make a decision. And if it's straining our eyes, we don't want to look at it. We'll move on to the next one. You don't want to make yourself a person to easily be dismissed, because as a recruiter and looking at lots of information, that's what you're looking at, is rule out factors really quickly that will make them move to the next person. So don't do that. Don't include personal information like on your resume, like your age, your weight, pictures of yourself, salary information, marital status, and please use spell check. If there's a squiggly line underneath the word, fix it unless it's a name, but please pay attention to those. Also, don't use fancy font types. These things you may think they look good, but they are a strain on the eye. Compared to the letters that you see earlier, if you have to look at those too often, you'll move on to the next one because it's straining on the eyes. And make sure you include your information chronologically. When you put your job history on, make sure you start with your most recent one. And for someone who's your age, you guys should never have more than one page. The longest resume I ever got was 76 pages. I was floored. I don't have time to read 76 pages. And I actually met the person and he was like, oh, I can't cut it down. I needed to include all that. I'm like, oh, that's an autobiography. That's not a resume. So keep it to one page. When you have enough career experience like I do, 2 pages is still enough. This is really supposed to be a really good glimpse and not an entire novel about your entire work experience, but enough that it would give someone just enough interest that they want to invite you in. But you also don't want them to be annoyed by you. So once you get to having some career experience, you want to keep some of that off of there. So about 10 years. If the job requires 15 years of experience or more, and in my case, I do have some jobs when you're working as an executive to work to have more than 10 years. There'll be a 15-year requirement or something like that. So you don't want to include too much because then all of a sudden you look really aged. And what's interesting is the recruiters are really young. So, they say, wow, that's from the 1900s, which is really funny to me that I was born in the 1900s and that's how these younger people see it. But unfortunately, that's true. Sometimes if you're only a very recent high school graduate, you can put it on there. But for the most part, I wouldn't. And don't include your GPA unless it was great. If you had a great GPA, include it. If you don't list it. So, but if you had any college experience, you should add that on there. If you need a cover letter, one of the things that I used to do is my email address was T Jackson for a long time. People would put Mr. Jackson, and that would be an immediate rule out factor. So don't assume gender by a person's name or their position. That will rule you out really quickly. So keep those things in mind, but have a cover letter. And anytime you write a cover letter, that's where you can take the opportunity to talk about the extras about you and why you can pitch your case for why you're the perfect person for that role. Keep that down to one page as well. Okay, so here's it's not an actual resume of what I got. I had to change the names, of course. So other than that, this is what somebody sent to me. And I can tell you that this is inappropriate information. To tell me your marital status, what the name is, the children's name, don't do that. The other thing too is only start with your education. This person has a lot of employment history. The only reason you start with your education is if you have no employment related relevant employment experience. Otherwise, you put that your employment information up there. And don't do redundant things. Like he says he was hired in mid 2007. I don't need to know that. He already put that he was in there from 2007 to present. So, and then this is just sloppy. When you have %15 to %20, this just tells me you don't pay attention to details. And there's a few other things that were in here. I was actually surprised that a grown-up sent this to me and asked me if it looked good. Let me tell you another pet peeve that us HR professionals have. If you send us your resume and say, will you look this over? And I give you feedback and it's still garbage after that, you will never get hired. So if you're either asking me to bless it as it is, or you really want some feedback. So if someone gives you feedback, you should actually make those adjustments, especially if you want to work with that person or want their recommendation. Okay, so I offered him some suggestions, and this is what I came up with. Let me tell you how important white space is on a resume. It is incredibly important because that helps our eyes as we're looking at a lot of things, and that it's organized in a way that I know where everything is. And so don't do too many fancy things. I've seen people put things down a left column. Well, you also have to remember that there now are computers who read the resumes before they get to people. So what happens is they go through a computer with some AI. It will pick up a lot of things and then develop a skill set and match them. So there's matching software now for resumes so that recruiters aren't looking at every single one of them. Once they go through that, then it will come to the recruiter, the top ranked people. What it does is it will look at the company and it looks at your job title and will assume certain duties that you've done. So the fact that this person has a store manager in their role and groceries in their role, things like that, it will automatically make assumptions that they know leadership, that they've worked in retail. So it will already pick those things up. What you want to focus on is not necessarily that I came to work and sold cheese. What you want to focus on are the accomplishments that you had in those roles. Because again, I can already assume from looking at his title and the amount of time he's been in that title, that this is a person who has achieved something, and has worked as a manager and has overseen people. So you don't need to put that. It would be good for me to know how many people he supervised, because this was a male in this situation. So if he said, managed a team of 15 associates, that is great information for me. So in improving the store's success by 15% in sales within a year of taking the position, that is important information to me, to know that this person can move the dial. So if you're working as a receptionist, it's not, I will assume that you know how to greet people and know how to answer calls, but it's also important for me to know how many calls did you answer per hour or per day? What is the volume of traffic that you saw? What kinds of other duties and tasks did you do that were outside of what you were doing? So those are important things to know. And if you got any special recognition, that's important. So these are things that you should add on there. So try to make sure that you include accomplished statements. So when you want to get started with your resume, oops, did I jump one? Okay, when you want to get started with your resume, what you should do is come up with a clean template. And I can provide one of these for you all, where I just recommend, first off, you just write it all out. Because unless you're savvy enough that you just want to type it out as you're doing it, and you can make some changes, but some people just need to actually write it out because it's intimidating to start off with this. And then you can add what you want. So you add the company's name and your length of service that you were in that role. You can include the city and state in there, but include some of the accomplished statements that you had, similar to what we just talked about. The next thing you want to do is network. Networking means talking to people about what you're looking for. So know what your story is. If someone says, "Oh, what are you looking for?" or what have you done?" or what happened when you were with whatever organization. So have about a pitch, a 30-minute pitch done. It's called an elevator pitch of, "Thank you for asking. I'm looking for a position that will allow me to use my skills as an HR professional in a company that's growing and that has advancement opportunities." Something like that. And you can just say, "I've worked in these kinds of roles, but I'm open to other roles that have the same, that are looking for the same kind of skill sets that I have." What happens often, especially with young people, and it's a bad habit that I really, really talk to young people about, is when I ask questions of people, they start off, when you're thinking, they say, "I don't know." And then they'll answer the question. And even though it may be subtle in a way to, instead of saying and ah, what you're saying is you're actually discrediting what you're going to say next. So pay attention to those little things that you say when you're taking a pause. You might want to say, "Let me think about that for a moment," or "That's a good question." That's a better way to pause than to say, "I don't know," and then answer the question. It's actually okay. As a recruiter and a person who interviews a lot, we're comfortable with silence. very comfortable with silence in between answers. And it also lets me know that you actually are thinking about it and not just coming up with canned answers. We don't like that either. We all know that people are people persons and all the normal things that people say. Don't do those things. They're not original. Okay. So you want to ask people to review your resume. So here's the thing is, if you're looking for a job, one of the things that will annoy people is if you say, hey, can you get me a job? Can you hire me? You know what you can also do to ask them that without asking them is say, would you look at my resume? I'm looking for a job and I'd love to get your feedback. What you're doing is putting your skill sets in front of someone who could possibly be in a position to hire you. And they're already drawing their own conclusion of whether they can or not. And also take the feedback that they give you if they ask you or if they tell you you might want to change your resume. So there's a different way of asking people for a job than to say, can you hire me? And you can also say, hey, if you know someone who's looking for someone like me with my skill set, just let me know. So instead of asking them for the job, you can ask them to let you know if someone else is looking for someone like you. And look for people who already work and in the organizations you're looking for. So come up with some target locations that you want to go to. Let me show you a few things of what you should do for interview clothes. You want to make sure you have at least one well-fitted pants or skirts and 2 blouses or shirts. And what I normally would recommend is have one set that's designated for your first interview and the second one for your second interview. So you never have to wonder about what did I wear the first time or the second time. Just know that that's the case. Keep them cleaned and pressed and ready to go, and always have wear attire that's not distracting. Here are some things that maybe are cute, but they're not for work. So you can wear these on other occasions, but not for interviews and not necessarily for work. And so keep that in mind when you're looking and preparing yourself for interviews and for jobs. This is not the look that you're looking for. This is more like what you're looking for. These are things that'll get you hired. Wear things that fit you, and don't worry about the size. You know, people think, oh, I don't want to buy the bigger size. If it looks good on you, nobody will look at the tag. Don't worry about it. Wear the size that's going to fit well with you and your body type, and that will allow you to present yourself well. So appearance and grooming, I'm going to cover these really quickly. We're going to just make sure if you have any tattoos, you cover them. Wear simple earrings. I don't want to talk to your earrings. Those things will become distracting. Or if you're wearing bracelets that you play with and make noise. And I don't hire people who smoke. I'm holding my breath the whole time if you come in smelling like smoke, and you won't get past me. Make sure that you do the other things. Keep your makeup simple and neat, and brush your teeth and floss. And, you know, I find things in people's teeth or they don't use deodorant. Make sure that those things are things you pay attention to. When you have an interview, ask who will be interviewing you and write their names down and practice. Do a whole trip. I had someone actually post yesterday that they went to the site that they navigated to 25 minutes early only to not be able to find the place to interview. And it took them, they ended up being 10 minutes late after they got through security. So if you know these things beforehand, that's important. So do a practice trip even then. And on your interview day, make sure you arrive not on time. You want to make sure to come early. Go to the restroom, make sure you review your appearance. Don't bring your friends and your kids. I've had people try to bring their kids in a stroller. That's not the time. You're going to have to find some other situation. Be prepared to answer the difficult questions. If you've been terminated before, or you had a difficult situation, or you might have to prepare yourself to answer those questions. And don't speak poorly of your past boss or employer. And also make sure that you speak to the people. If there's a panel, speak to the person who's actually speaking to you and maintain good eye contact. So if you got the job, great. Follow through on the onboarding as soon as you can with the background check, your drug screen, and your references, and show up on time. So know your deadlines, and also be willing to take an entry-level job. Leave your problems at home and help somebody else now that you have the job. So it is now 12:30, and I know that that's how long I had. So I'm willing to take questions if there are some.
Thank you, Tracy. Her information is posted. If you like her contact information, her information is also on the CTE webpage. We did drop a document in the chat that's entitled Hustle to Bustle with all the great tips. But we also have, for everyone that attended today, Tracy has sent us great, nice pens. They're not cheap, you guys. These are some excellent pens with her information on it. And I'm going to make sure that these pens get to each one of your schools if you participated to your college and career counselors. We're going to also be doing a drawing. We have about 6 or 7 bottles here. We're going to do a drawing of water bottles. This is what they look like. Very quickly here, if you have questions, you can ask her, but everything's in here that you're going to need. And also there's a little holder for your phone. So stay tuned for those recipients. And I think we have a Q&A here, but I'd like to thank Miss Jackson. Do you have any tips for getting your first job?
Yes, I gave them. I'm kidding. Okay. But asking around for people who are looking for someone who knows you or knows the kind of skill set that you have, you need to know what your skill set is. So what I would do is just start asking around. Word of mouth is a really good way, or networking. So your parents of your friends, ask them and start asking people, how did you get your first job? And start learning from their stories of how they got their first job. Now things are evolving because you used to have to go in and fill out an application and all that. Now that there's this virtual environment, that is actually not as helpful for you. So as close as you can get to the hiring person in person, that's going to be your best bet to get hiring, is if they know your name or someone has recommended you, they're more likely to hire you in that situation.
Okay. Excellent. Do we have any other questions from our participants or comments?
They say the link is not working. I did say tire shops might be good places, or places where they change oil, and they're always looking for people because, number one, you wouldn't necessarily think about a job like that, but think about it. They have management opportunities. So often it's not really the widget that really counts for you to grow into a role and for them to promote from within, because they do those kinds of things. So if you're looking to get management experience, that's a great way to do it, is to find an industry where you can work your way up and then you can move into other industries with that experience.
Thank you, Tracy. The link should be working now. So you guys might want to just click on that for her Hustle to Bustle handout. And again, it's on the CTE website. There's another question here very quickly. This is being recorded, so we'll be able to go back to this recording sometime tomorrow within 24 hours. If you're not going with your communication, if you're not going with your communicating skills, you're saying we should practice our communication skills. Okay, sorry, didn't really understand the question, but basically your communication skills are very important.
There's a comment in there, Tracy. It says tire shops are good as well. You did reference that industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was referring to just
okay.
It was a good.
Thanks, Ms. Cooper. Okay.
What is the number one thing employers are looking for?
I can tell you this: show up on time. That's 75% of the job, is to show up and ready to work. With a good attitude. If you can do that, most employers are willing to work with you, even if it takes a little longer. It's people who don't show up on time, who have bad attitudes, are the ones that you just really become spent with really quickly and want to terminate them. So that's the one thing I can tell you that you should do, is to show up on time with a good attitude.
And if you plan to attend the rest of the workshops, I encourage you to attend the next workshop as well. They may be talking about soft skills and hard skills, to be honest with you. And the field that Tracy's in, I'd rather hire someone with the soft skills versus the technical skills, because we can actually train you. So showing up on time is very important. So if your start time is at 7:30, you're late at 7:30. Okay. So do we have any other questions? Okay, so stay tuned for the drawing, and I will make sure that I get a pin to each one that participated. And again, I can't thank you enough, Tracy Jackson. You're absolutely outstanding. You guys, this is a free workshop for you, but her hourly rate, think about going into HR. I can't even tell you what her hourly rate is, okay? Because I can't afford her. So anyway, thank you so much again. It
My
was great
pleasure.
seeing you, and we look forward to checking out the recording. And good luck, students, and continue to sign up for the rest of the workshops through Thursday. Thank you, Tracy.